spanning the nerd world and feeding your fandom. It's time for the Down and Nerdy podcast. Here's your host, James Witham.
When the bat is away, the family will play. It's episode 382 of the Down and Nerdy podcast. I'm James Witham, and I know that you've been waiting for Gotham Knights, the brand new game that's going to be coming from Warner Brothers Games, and so many fantastic characters that are a part of that. And I got a chance to talk to one of them recently, actually. Sloane Morgan Siegel is on the show this week to talk about playing Tim Drake in Gotham Knights. So, who's his favorite Robin other than Tim Drake? What are those interactions going to be like? How much can he tell us about the game? Probably not a ton, but I'll ask him about that. And I know he's a big comic book guy, too. So we're going to dive heavy into some comics with him this week, I guarantee you. Plus, a couple big reviews are going to be happening on the show this week. Going to talk about The Witcher, Nightmare of the Wolf. Also, Supergirl's back. I'll talk about that. You know I'm not going to not talk about the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, right? I don't care how long ago it came out. You're still talking about it. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about your reactions to it and a whole bunch more. There's a bunch of other and Arrowverse crossovers coming. There's new DC movies to talk about. So much to get to, as always. I mean, how's that any different, right? So let's start things off by talking to Sloane Morgan Siegel. Let's find out what he can tell us about Gotham Knights. Up next on the Down and Nerdy podcast.
This is David Sobolov, voice of Grodd on The Flash and Drax on Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. And you're listening to the Down and Nerdy podcast.
You might have heard about a little something called Gotham Knights that's going to be coming. It's a really cool story, actually, with so many great characters from Gotham City that you're going to love. And this guy's a part of that and so much more. It's Sloane Morgan Siegel. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing good. So, I mean, for anybody on the video side that's seeing this, of course, a podcast audio, you can't see this. So he's got this huge stack of like graphic novels and like big hardbound DC editions behind him. It's insane.
Oh yeah, and there's a whole nother stack behind all of these stacks. So I'm a collector, all right. I'm wearing, my superhero shirt.
I have that exact shirt. I'm not even kidding.
I
have that exact shirt. I'm just not wearing it right now. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna sit in front of my comic books. May as well wear a comic book shirt as well. I was just watching X-Men, the animated series.
Nice.
Like while I was eating breakfast, and I'm as nerdy as you can get.
All right, here's the question then. And I know this is going to be a tough one because it always is for me. What's that comic that first kind of caught your eye and got you hooked when you really first started getting into it?
Shockingly enough, Hawkman.
Wow, see, another Hawkman fan. Yay!
I love Hawkman, especially the recent run, recent run of Hawkman. Mm-hmm. I forget who the writer and artist are.
Venditti had been doing it. I don't know if that's who you're talking about. But
maybe. The most recent run was, fantastic. I could not put the book down. And also, appearances from Adam Strange and the Atom. And, I love Hawkman and the Atom's relationship. It's really cool what they've been developing, right? Yeah, I picked up a Hawkman comic. I don't even know what run it was. Maybe it was the Death of Hawkman. I don't know maybe it was Savage Hawkman. I can't remember. But either way, I was in a collectible store because I always liked action figures. I started liking action figures. I collected those, and I saw this long box with comic books, and my sister was with me. And she was like, we got to get you into comic books. So we looked at the long box, and I saw Hawkman, and I was like, that is so cool. And so I picked that up, and that's what got me hooked.
Man, you and I are just right here. Because I started with action figures, too. This is crazy. Okay.
Yeah. My action figure collection's still downstairs. It's funny.
I have a feeling we can get into that. Okay, well, do you remember your first one then? Your first action figure?
My first action figure? I was a big Transformers guy. Yes. So I have the entire Beast Wars collection.
So you're really excited about what's coming then, if that's
my gosh, yeah, in 3 of the Netflix show. Oh my gosh, yeah, I was watching the first one, and it took me a little bit to get into it because I was trying to get used to the style, and then also not Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime.
Yeah, that's hard. I get it.
Yeah, which nothing against the actor that's playing Optimus right now. It's just you hear Optimus, you think Peter Cullen.
No doubt, yeah.
But the guy that's playing him now, once again, I'm blanking on names. He's doing really, really great. I also love the cast of Transformers that they put in the series, like the different ones, and also the really edgy take on Bumblebee kind of threw me off at first. I was like, really, we're going that route? And then I really fell for it. But no, I'm really excited for that too, especially because Dinobot is my favorite character. That arc is it's the best redemption arc of all time. Prove me wrong. Like,
it's incredible, man. I mean, you're not going to get me to argue with you right
yeah,
here.
like he saves the human race. Like Predacon turned Maximal. Yeah, I know my stuff. But no, I was collecting Transformers. The very first one I ever had was a Starscream, like one move action figure.
Nice.
It was like one of those, like, you unfold it and it's no longer a jet. And that was my first one.
I love how you went Decepticon first, too. That's very villainous on your part.
Bad guys are always cooler. They always have cooler.
Well, Starscream, too. I mean, if you're going to pick one, that's, yeah.
Yeah. I loved Transformers Armada was, like, the series. I loved the Minicons. Those were, like, the coolest thing to me. It was, like, all the little ones. But I watched the Transformers animated film. You know the one. I've seen that 100 times. I could quote every line. And for those fans out there, Ba weep grana weep ninibong.
Nice.
Is the universal greeting. I shall now greet to you all.
I love it. That's awesome.
Also,
man.
Orson Welles is Unicron. I'll never get over.
Yeah, let's just wrap our heads around that for just a second.
Right. I mean, they were like, hey, he was like, "You want me to do what?" And then he was like, "Okay."
Seriously, man, no doubt. So let's actually talk about Gotham Knights for just a second because it's a really interesting story. I mean, it takes place after the death of Bruce Wayne. So, I mean, you're a longtime gamer too. I know that. So, how excited were you to kind of be a part of something that really hasn't been done before? And that's saying a lot about DC.
Well, as a fan of DC, clearly, it blew my mind because these are characters that have long been deserving of a spotlight. To step into the shoes of these characters is like really cool as a gamer, but then and as a fan of everything. But as like now playing one of the characters, I mean, it's a dream come true. I mean, you could not have picked a bigger fan to play the character. So I did all the research necessary, and I'm trying to do it as much justice as I can. Pun intended, I guess. Yeah, it's a dream come true. I mean, I really think it's going to be awesome.
I think Tim Drake's such an interesting character too because he's just as intelligent as he's skilled as a fighter. So, I mean, he's also a fan favorite too. So that there's a little something that comes along with that. So how did you approach playing him actually? Because I mean, not a whole lot of people have.
I looked at all the source material, and I looked at who he was as a person, and I looked at the material they gave me, and I kind of tried to make all one big marriage of it all. Well, I think, in my opinion, he's the best Robin, right? Like, you could say Dick and Jason are like great Robins, but they're not. They're great Nightwing. They're great Red Hood. But Tim is like the Robin. And then obviously Damian comes into the picture, but I'm not a big fan of Damian. It depends on the iteration, honestly.
I just wouldn't say that to Damian, of course, but you know.
Oh no, yeah, kill me. But anyway, no. So as approaching the character, I tried to keep him as youthful as possible while not making him stupid, because obviously he's super intelligent, and while he may not get most, social cues because he's too busy being in his head, I'm not excluding that youthfulness. So he's definitely still a kid, but he takes his responsibility seriously, and he takes the mantle of Robin seriously, just as he does in the comics.
I know you can't talk about like who's actually in the game, but when you were approaching getting ready to play this, I mean, your head had to be filled with, if I get to face off with this villain, that would be so awesome, or this group of villains. Were there any groups or villains, without, of course, revealing anything, that you were really hoping, man, I really hope that they're in the game. I really hope I get to play against them.
I think I'm gonna have to omit this question, because anything I say is gonna be talked about as like, well, maybe this or that. So I can't answer that.
Well, we'll just assume they're all in the game then.
Yeah,
that's what we'll do.
Yeah,
no,
because I would want to, but then people are gonna be like, oh, but he didn't say this one. So, yeah. But I'm a huge villain fan, obviously, because like, I don't know, what makes a good hero is a really good villain. And as far as rogue galleries go, Batman certainly has an extensive one. I mean, I know a lot of people say like Spider-Man and the Flash have like really good rogue galleries, but as far as rogues that have been explored, I would say Batman's is the most fleshed out.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I don't know, because Spider-Man's that is a big statement, because Spider-Man does have some really fleshed out.
I don't know. If you're going to stack it up against anybody, though, Batman's the one to do it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too huge.
Go hand in hand,
Let's talk about this then. Not even necessarily related to the game itself, because we've talked about there's been multiple Robins, and you obviously picked out who your favorite Robin was. But what's your favorite kind of Robin dynamic? Like, is it like, man, I really love it when you get to play off of like Red Hood and Tim Drake, or you get to play off of Dick Grayson and Tim Drake? Do you have a favorite like Robin interaction?
Yeah, I love getting to play off of Stephen O'Young, who's Red Hood. I love getting to play off Stephen. It's really fun. We have a lot of cool stuff.
Did you guys get to record together at all, or was this all done virtually?
Yeah, before the pandemic, we were filming in person. We were doing the motion capture and the facial capture and everything, and that was like the coolest thing in the world. And then obviously when travel shut down, we had to start doing it remote. So now we have body doubles who are doing all of our physical work, and then we're doing the vocals and everything. But yeah, so now it's like a combination of us and the other actors as well, who are doing a spectacular job. But also, to add on the question, I am having a blast acting with everybody. They're all fantastic.
No doubt, yeah.
I particularly love those interactions because I'm a Red Hood fan. That's my of the Bat family, that's my favorite character. So I actually cosplayed as him once.
Oh, awesome. I love it. If you were going to go incognito, man, that's the character to pick.
Yeah, right.
So you told me who your Robin was. Who's your Batman? And I'm talking actors now, or you can go animated series. You can go anything, animated, live action, video games. Who's your Batman? Because everybody has one.
I mean, Kevin Conroy.
Yeah.
It's so difficult for me to not hear, because obviously, well, it's like your favorite doctor, right? In Doctor Who, it's like your favorite doctor is always your first doctor. It's so difficult to then see a new one and be like, now they're my favorite, because they hold such a special place in your heart. I believe Kevin Conroy was the voice of Batman in Justice League Unlimited, right?
I'm pretty sure he was. Yeah,
and that was my he was also in The Brave and the Bold, maybe. Yeah, no.
I don't know if he was Brave and the Bold. I think it was it was one or the other.
Yeah, well, one or the other. Either one. One of those was my first introduction to Batman. And so that's why Kevin Conroy would be my favorite. Is he was the first voice I heard. And so I'm like, like that's him to me. It's like Peter Cullen as Optimus, It's like,
no doubt,
he started as that. And even if you didn't hear, if you didn't hear him first, maybe he wouldn't be your favorite. But since that was the first voice you heard, that's what you associate it with,
So here's something that I was thinking about, because you're actually, I was told you're writing a fiction novel right now. I'll ask you about that here in a second, but there's a lot of actors that are actually getting to write comics nowadays. So if you get a chance, if DC came to you and said, look, Sloane, we want you to write we want you to write something in the Batman realm, who would you want to write?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Wow, I've never thought about the Batman part of DC as far as what I would write, because I never thought I would ever get to that point. You know what I mean? Because I'm a writer at heart.
If you want to go outside of Batman, unless we've made it clear that it would be Hawkman.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be cool to write Hawkman, but there's only so many ways you can do it.
Right.
Like, I would really like to write Superman, actually.
Ooh.
Like, if I had the opportunity to write like a big DC title, I would love to write Superman, and then I would love to take the Man of Steel and just break him, and then have him build back up again. Just like a typical story would go. I mean, you take the invulnerable person and you make them as vulnerable as possible without making them, because usually to make the invulnerable people vulnerable, you take their family or their friends or their loved ones,
right,
and that's where their heart is. But if you make them vulnerable physically or mentally or emotionally, I feel like that'd be a really cool story. So maybe I'd introduce a new villain entirely. But as far as Batman goes, man, I'd love to write a Scarecrow story.
That would be cool.
Yeah, maybe write like Red Hood and Scarecrow or something. I guess there's a lot of fears to play off of there.
Interesting.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
I like that. What you guys can't see if you're not seeing this on videos is that Sloane actually has like the partial Superman curl in the front of his hair. I don't even know if he did that on purpose or if
totally
that's instinctive on you.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun if one day I don't know. I never thought I could play Superman or Superboy or anything.
Well, there are cosplay opportunities there too. So,
true.
Once people see it on social media, man, it goes viral and you never know what can happen in this day and age. So you just never know about that sort of thing. But talk about a little bit about this fiction novel that you're writing, because maybe this is the gateway to you being able to write comics at some point. What made you come up with the idea for this novel?
I'm working on a couple things. I'm working on a novel and I'm working on a comic.
Oh.
So I'm trying to find an artist right now, and then once I get an artist and get the ball rolling on that, then I can start taking it to publishers. But I was in my local comic book shop and I was talking with the owner, Andy, and I was like, I'm trying to come up with a story, something simple, something to be like my gateway in. And he was like, maybe you should write something without any dialogue. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, it'd be super simple. And, pretty much an entirely visual story. And I was like, wow, that's actually a really good idea. So I started doing it, but I'm too poetic. So I turned this no dialogue story into a very dialogue heavy story.
There you go.
But amongst the action and everything, like as I'm doing my research and everything, obviously as someone who's read comics for such a long time, I know how they work. I know how the story ticks. I know how the character arcs are drawn, and I know how over many issues you can get the story across. So that was kind of how I came up with the idea for the story. But yeah, I can't wait to share more.
It's gonna be awesome. We'll talk about artists in a minute. Well, we'll talk. I got some ideas.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sloane, before I let you go, man, if you could put yourself into one comic book franchise right now, whether it be TV, movies, or anything like that, maybe there's a show there or a movie that you really love, where would you like to put yourself into in the specific world right now?
I'd put myself in Doom Patrol.
Oh, what a great choice.
I'd go to Doom Patrol. I'd play Grimsley the Witch Boy in Doom Patrol. That's what I do.
He's even got the role picked out.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I do it. Yeah, no, I've thought about it extensively. I'm like, who could I play that would be just crazy? It would be awesome. And what was funny is I'm really allergic to cats too. So as I'm like holding Tikal, if I'm sneezing the entire time, I think that would be hilarious.
That would be a character trait, man. I mean, that would just be one of those things you could just add it in.
Like, I mean, the demon boy is allergic to his own soul. It's crazy.
You'd have people tweeting, "Is that canon?" I don't know. It's pouring through issues to find one issue where he sneezes, and then you're fine. It's.
But if I could, if I could get on any of the shows right now, comic book wise, that are out there, I definitely do Doom Patrol because it is just a marvel. Like it's so good the way they break down the characters and everything, and the actors are great, the writing's great, and like I love that interpretation of Cyborg as well because Cyborg's another one of my favorite characters of all time, and just the way they do it, it's really, really good.
No doubt about it. And what you can definitely see him in is Gotham Knights, which is going to be available sometime in 2022. We'll figure it out. It'll be out in 2022. It already looks amazing. You've already seen it at DC Fan. Maybe another updated DC Fandom in October. Maybe. We're going to cross our fingers.
I don't know. They don't tell me anything.
Well, they don't tell us anything either. So we know we've got that in common for sure. Sloane Morgan Siegel, man, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And if his enthusiasm alone for not just all things DC, but for Gotham Knights as well, doesn't get you excited for it, I don't know what else to tell you. It's such a pleasure to talk to Sloane Morgan Siegel, and it just sounds like he's got a lot of great stuff going on. Definitely keep you posted on all of that. Again, thanks to Sloane for joining me this week. Up next, going to dive right into the reviews. Let's go to The Witcher and talk about Nightmare of the Wolf from Netflix. That's next on the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
This is comic book artist Eric Donovan, and you're listening to the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
This week we're going to do more than toss a coin to a Witcher. We're going to talk about The Witcher Nightmare of the Wolf, the Netflix animated film that I'm going to talk about. Spoiler-filled now, so if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you keep that in mind. And what I love right off the bat about what this did is that it took us way back, right? So if you're a Witcher fan anyway, you're going to go further back than Geralt. You're going to go further back than what you're used to and really get to the backstory of some of these Witchers, and especially Vesemir, because we get to see not only current day Vesemir, I say current day, grown-up Vesemir, and you get to see young Vesemir as well, and what this kid went through, and how he chose to become a Witcher, and how it went when he was becoming a Witcher, training as a child, and the relationship that he had with the man that actually took him in to become a Witcher, Deglin. It was very, very interesting from youth up until adulthood as well. You say adulthood, but Witchers don't age as quickly as humans do. So, he's certainly matured enough, but at the same time still very, very young compared to some of the other Witchers. And I mean, you understand how Vesemir became who he was as an adult, but all this at the same time, you could really look at Vesemir as an unlikable character if you wanted to. He's cocky, he's brash, he doesn't really care about much, he's very self-absorbed sort of thing. That's not necessarily personality traits that you'd look for in someone that you really like, right? But at the same time, you get to see some of that vulnerability come out a little bit more. And you get to see him drawn out a little bit more and find out who he really is. And a lot of that is connected to Ilyana and how that relationship progresses as well. Basically leaving her behind in their youth. And is there guilt there with that? And that's something that needed to be dealt with. And a lot of this is Vesemir ultimately dealing with his past. Not to mention the monsters that are coming out. And yeah, there's some really cool monster slaying moments in this, and you get to find out. The most interesting thing to me about this was about the hybrids, the monsters that are not that have been created, And the big twist, and this is the biggest spoiler that I could give you. So if you haven't seen it yet, this is the big spoiler. Finding out that the Witchers were actually creating the beasts that they were slaying for money, to me, was the biggest wow moment of this movie, and such a smart writing choice, because that automatically creates a huge problem for the Witchers across the board. And you'd understand why the humans would be upset about that, right? Or anybody else for that matter. The elves, on down the line. Everybody's got to be upset about that, because, you know, you got these beasts that are going out there just killing people left and right. And who do you turn to for that? The Witchers. But then who are responsible for that? The Witchers. And how do you know that you can trust them anymore, right? So then that ultimately sets up that huge final battle. And this movie escaped one big problem that I was worried about as things were going along. And that is that it felt too Castlevania-esque. That's what it felt like to me. Because and early on, you thought it was going to be that, right? When Vesemir and Tetra sort of team up reluctantly, right? You sort of kind of get those Sypha vibes and Belmont vibes, right? You kind of got that a little bit, right? But then that totally gets turned on its ear, and you get the epic battle between Tetra and Vesemir at the end, which was really, really good in that illusion she creates. And Vesemir ultimately ends up being responsible for Ileana's death, which I thought was another fantastic choice, because I did not see that coming at all. So this movie had a lot of different twists and turns along with it that I thought were really, really interesting, and it told a more deep story than I thought. And it's seeing almost the, I don't know if betrayal is the right word, but Vesemir looking to Deglin as the one person he thought he could really rely on and trust in the mentor relationship that they had, reluctantly maybe than it might have been, and what Deglin was ultimately responsible for, or oversaw anyway, and how Vesemir felt about that, really, I think, shapes the future of the Witchers, right? This was, if Nightmare of the Wolf serves as nothing else, it serves as a turning point in the Witcher experience, is for the lack of a better way of putting it. Obviously, yes, it's still for Cohen and Glory. It really is, and that comes straight from the logline from Netflix. But once Vesemir is in charge, he sort of takes a different angle, right, with the Witchers and the young kids. And Geralt, of course, being one of them. That was a nice little something that was thrown in at the end there. But this movie made a lot of smart choices. Was it slow at times? Yeah, there were certainly times when it dragged on a little bit or kept on some scenes a little bit too long. But ultimately, the action was good. It was a very enjoyable experience. You had some great acting moments from Theo James as Vesemir, the great Jennifer Hale as Ileana, I thought was fantastic in this. I forgot to mention Kitsu, who played a big role, with Kari Walgren providing that voice. Graham McTavish showing why he is a voice-over legend, quite frankly, at this point. I mean, I know that he hasn't been doing it as long as somebody like Jennifer Hale, but when every role you are a part of is fantastic, you're reaching legendary status pretty damn quickly. So Graham McTavish, another tip of the cap to you. And overall, just a very, very good cast and very, very, very well done. Beau DeMayo, who wrote the screenplay, deserves a ton of credit for how well this went, as far as I'm concerned. So if we got more of these, I'd be excited. I mean, obviously, you want more of The Witcher live action stuff, right? But if we got more of these animated movies, I would not be sad about that at all. This anime style really lends itself to the Witcher story very, very well, and I think Nightmare of the Wolf is a great example of that. That's going to do it for my spoiler-filled review of The Witcher Nightmare of the Wolf from Netflix. Up next, going to tackle the Season 6 mid-season premiere of Supergirl. Let's keep doing spoilers as well. I'm James Witham, and this is the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
This is Chris Vance from Supergirl, and you're listening to the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
Welcome back, Kara. That is right. The mid-season premiere of Supergirl's final season is finally upon us. I want to give my spoiler-filled review of that return for Supergirl. And it just, so far to me, it feels like a final season that doesn't really feel like a final season. And I don't know, maybe you could consider that a good thing, or you could consider that a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. I mean, in certain respects, it does, right? You have Kara getting to spend time with her dad, Zor-El, right before, the final season hits. So, you get that feel-good vibe for Kara. You also, on the flip side, get Nia struggling with what's going on with, missing her mom and things like that. So that could also lead to things, maybe for that character down the line, post-Supergirl as well. And you actually see a little bit of hubris. And I love that they actually threw that line in the episode, too, from Zor-El, because he sees Earth headed down the same path as Krypton. There was a real environmental focus, actually, on this episode, saying, that, hey, Earth's oceans are dangerously dirty and just nasty, and that's how things kind of went over the edge for Krypton, and we exploded. So he goes all out to try and fix it, right? And when he can't, that really hits him hard. And, well, he tries to fix it, it goes horribly wrong. And he, there was a way to kind of safeguard things that happened, and Jean and Brainy were both like, maybe we should pump the brakes on this. But Zor-El was so insistent because of his guilt for what happened to Krypton, and his guilt to what happened to Kara by extension, too. You see that get dealt with in the episode as well, that it kind of clouds the judgment. So it just goes to show you that some of the smartest minds can still be clouded by hubris. And I think that was a point that was made by this episode, either purposely or not purposely. You see that put on full display here in this episode. And you also get to see some massive PTSD from Kara when she goes after coming back from the Phantom Zone. And then it gets thrust in her face by Andrea Rojas, who expects her to just, pump out this article about the Phantoms attacking National City. And imagine the worst thing you've ever gone through that still gives you night sweats sometimes, and then your boss telling you that you needed to dive headfirst into all this and write an article about it. Yeah, not easy. Now, obviously, Andrea doesn't know the car is Supergirl, right, and all that good stuff, but at the same time, it's like, talk about face your fears whether you like it or not sort of thing. And Kara sort of realizes that. And Alex, if this doesn't give you another classic Kara and Alex moment, I love how they followed up what was young Kara and young Alex from their youth. They follow that up with an episode like this. You see the struggles that they went through when they were young, and now you see how far they've come as adults. And, and Alex saying that the only way past it is through it. And that was such a great line in this episode. And I mean, imagine I've been struggling with some personal things myself recently, and you figure out, how you're going to get past it. You go through it. And sometimes you just, it's weird that in an episode of Supergirl, you realize something like that. But, that's something you can take with you in your everyday life. And that this show has given us those moments over the years. You might not always agree with them, but that is what this show actually tries to tackle those things at times, which I think is really interesting. And even Lena and her quest to figure out what happened with her mom. You see that as well. So there was a lot of really raw emotional stuff in this episode. And I didn't hate it at all. This is when Supergirl is at its best, when it can do things like this and then bring little lighthearted moments here and there to sort of lighten things up a little bit. I think is really, really cool. This show does as well. It seems like in its final episodes, this show is finding its groove again and remembering what made us as fans love it in the first place. So I thought this was a really, really good return for Supergirl. And I also love the fact that it seems like they're going away from the whole Kara and William romance. You saw that in this episode. That made me very, very happy. As some say, I do not ship that at all. I never have, and I can't see myself ever doing that. And hopefully they're going to go in a different direction. Or maybe they just don't focus on the whole relationship thing with Kara at all, because her character is interesting beyond her being in a relationship. I think that that's something that needs to be realized. And I know that some fans want to explore the Lena aspect of that story, but maybe if they had more time and this wasn't their final season, maybe you get there. I don't think you have to force the relationship angle on Kara at all. Like 100% at all. Her character doesn't need to be defined by that in any way. I know that there's, I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it at all, but I kind of am at the same time. Like, if you had more time and more seasons, sure, focus on that a little bit, but I don't think that that's the legacy of this character. That's not something that you need to focus on in a final season when you're trying to wrap everything up. So, whether or not they focus on that, it won't be a deal breaker for me, but again, not something that I really think is necessary. And you saw what happened at the end, right? Maybe we're not done with Nixley after all. And I that's another thing I certainly wouldn't hate, bringing her back for this final season. So it seems like there's a lot of things to tie up here. Not sure if how many of them we're gonna get to, or how this season is gonna wrap up. But I think this was an episode that was a reminder of just how much you love Supergirl for those emotional and lighthearted moments as well, and things that can just feel real from that show sometimes. So very well done in the season 6 mid-season premiere of Supergirl. And hey, that's going to do it for that spoiler-filled review of the season 6 mid-season premiere of Supergirl. Up next, let's go right to the comics, shall we? It's what we're reading on the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
Hey, this is Robert Venditti, and you're listening to the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
Whether you're looking for some nostalgia or something new, got them both for you this week with what we're reading. And going to start with that nostalgia and Superman 78, number 1, from DC Comics. Robert Venditti writing this one, Wilfredo Torres on the art, the great Jordi Belair on the colors, AWL's Dave Lanphier on the letters. Now, this issue kind of takes a look at how Donner may have handled bringing Brainiac into his Superman story. So imagine yourself being transported back to the time when Richard Donner, the great Richard Donner, was making those Superman films, and what would happen if Brainiac had appeared in one of them. Now, the classic vibe is still there, especially with Clark Kent in this story. It really felt like the Christopher Reeve Clark Kent was jumping off the page at me. Art-wise, the look was a little bit different, of course, but I really, really love what they did with Clark Kent in this one. And, everything going on at the Daily Planet was very, very similar as well. And then you get the incursion of Brainiac, or one of the Brainiac bots that lands on Earth. And then, of course, Superman has to deal with that. And it's a little bit of a different, vibe for Superman in this one. Of course, not trying to give too much away here or anything, but it was just a very interesting way that it was dealt with. And I think it was very time specific how it was dealt with as well, because of the police response and everything around it too. So that was really, really neat. I really felt like this was a good homage to what Donner's would be thinking, story-wise, on how to tell this particular story. I really love the character design for Brainiac. You can almost see how the practical effects would have been used on the screen for that. So it was very, very cool. That, just all in all, I think this was a fun and solid first entry. I think that Venditti and company really, really just wanted to do justice to this story and these characters. You could tell that the entire creative team just happens to be fans of this, and how could you not be, right? So again, a really, really good start. Can't wait to see where things are going to be going in Superman 78 after this first issue. Then I decided to go over to Marvel Comics and Darkhawk number 1, brand new story from Kyle Higgins, who writes this one. Juanan Ramirez doing the art, Eric Arsenegia doing the colors. Sorry, Eric, for butchering your name. And VC's Travis Lanham doing the letters here. Iban Coelho and Jesus Umberto on the cover art as well. Again, apologies if I butchered anyone's name there, but imagine being a star basketball player in your youth, because that's exactly who Connor Young is. He's the star basketball player. I mean, when I say star, I'm talking an NBA quality star here, okay? And it looks like he's going to be that mega superstar at such a young age, but a sudden medical diagnosis changes his entire life. And again, I'm not going to try to spoil too much here, even though this book has already been out. But, I mean, that usually means bad news, right? You get a diagnosis that's going to change your whole outlook on life, and all the talk is starting to get to him, quite frankly. And he's just a kid. Why wouldn't it get to him, right? If you thought you were on top of the world and all of a sudden you got some bad news that kind of sends you crashing back down tenfold, you might not handle it well, right? But Connor's actually destined for much bigger things, and he has no idea until he finds, and again, this might be the biggest spoiler that I'm going to give you here, he finds a mysterious object that's fallen from the sky. Now, he is Darkhawk. And what's interesting to me in the story is, even though we're talking about a new character here, a new story, the name seems to be pretty well known within the story itself already. Now, how is that? Why is that? That's something that I'm sure that the story will get into at some point. Now, what he doesn't know, though, talking about Connor, is there's a big twist in the story that's coming. We see it at the end. Obviously, he doesn't know it, but boy, is this going to make things interesting going forward. And that's one of the cool things that I really liked about this story was, you're setting me up and you give me a lot of great stuff when it comes to Connor, and you give me a lot of emotional roller coaster moments, and then you hit me with what you hit me with at the end that I'm not going to spoil, and I'm like, oh, wow. So that's going to complicate things for Connor at some point and just down the line in general. I mean, as far as there were a couple things that weren't really a surprise to me, and one of them was kind of tied to that moment. You're like, oh, so those douchebags are responsible for this. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. But then it's that last reveal where you go, whoa, did not see that coming at all. And again, the art for this is spectacular. I thought the whole art team did just a stunning job with this. And even before the Darkhawk reveal, just the early pages of the basketball stuff and kind of what happens to Connor that leads up to his diagnosis and how that whole thing was handled from an art perspective, I thought really, really sold those moments as well. So very, very well done on everyone's part. And this one was one that I liked actually more than I expected. I mean, I like Kyle Higgins' work anyway, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to read this in the first place. But this one surprised me a lot, and I'm glad I liked it. Darkhawk #1 from Marvel Comics. That's going to do it for what we're reading. Up next, so there was a trailer that came out this week, pretty big, Spider-Man something. Yeah, we'll talk about that and plenty more next with Nerd News on the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
Yo, this is Cam Rush Johnson from the cast of Batwoman, and you are listening to the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
This is the most Easter egg hunting I've seen outside of the month of April. It's time for Nerd News. I'm serious. I'm going to start things off with the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. Of course, the movie coming out only in theaters on December the 17th. And I will say that this, first of all, I never actually thought we'd get a trailer. I thought they really might just not give us a trailer at all, which has been great publicity up to this point. But, the trailer's now shattered records for views in its first day, and fans are all over the place posting, theories, and Tom Holland saying it's only the tip of the iceberg and trying to spot Easter eggs and stuff like that. I'll give you the Green Goblin one. Okay, obviously I got to give you Doc Ock because he shows up in the trailer. But, I mean, we're digging here, right? For Matt Murdock, Easter eggs because you see arms on a table when Peter's at the police station. The lightning saying that's Electro. I mean, maybe it is. Fans think that they've spotted lizards, scorpion, and all this other stuff. And then you get the toy reveals, right? And maybe this is a spoiler alert where you got Shriek that's a part of that as well, and some others. So, I mean, maybe you did, but maybe you didn't. But this is one of those trailers that everybody is off the rails about, and everybody has an opinion. And even saying, Doctor Strange wasn't really acting like Doctor Strange. And then the whole Mephisto thing comes back into play again. And I'm like, we just got rid of that. Now we're going to be talking about it again. You want to talk about somebody screwing up the timeline. It looks like whoever it is, I'm assuming it is Doctor Strange, really going to screw up the timeline too, by the way. So never mind what Sylvie did, what Wanda did. Let's talk about what Doctor Strange is getting ready to do. But this is when we really crack the multiverse wide open, right? Like, this is where, maybe my Miles Morales theory pans out that I had several podcasts ago, where I say that, Miles Morales ends up having to be the Spider-Man in the MCU because of Sony and their now Spider-Man universe that they've created. But that's another rabbit hole for another day that we won't go down, because I want to talk about this trailer. And it makes sense. Everything kind of played in line of how we thought it would. Peter wanting people to forget that he's Spider-Man, and then he kind of decides, wait a minute, I don't know if I want everybody to forget that I'm Spider-Man, and that's where the trouble comes in. Peter's indecisiveness and how he chooses, and here's the other thing that kind of drove me nuts a little bit. It's like, dude, just because they forget you're Spider-Man, you could still technically tell people after the fact, right? I mean, you could go back and tell a few people that you're Spider-Man that you want to know, like Aunt May and MJ and stuff like that. You could tell them. I mean, you probably shouldn't, but you could, right? There's a debate there too. But so that was just something, and I'm not trying to ruin the trailer for you. I'm just saying that's one of the things that I thought about. But I mean, you want to talk about just mind-bending action too, and just where the endless list of possibilities. You almost understand why the fan theories and stuff are getting out of control, because this trailer only fueled that. And by the way, that was on purpose, too. They want you to be talking about this like this. They want you to be going on endlessly about who's in this. And let's say, just for the sake of argument, right, that Tobey Maguire and or Andrew Garfield are in this movie. I don't expect that to see that in a trailer at all. I think you gotta leave some surprises, don't you? You gotta leave some stuff. And I think this movie should actually leave a lot of stuff. Look how much talk they got about just one trailer. Do they need more chatter about this movie? They really don't. So I'm not saying there won't be another trailer. There probably will be. But with big reveals in it, maybe they do reveal Green Goblin because that was an almost obvious tease, right? But I don't know that you're going to get a ton more than that. So I wouldn't hold my breath for that reveal, but I wouldn't be, and would be surprised if they did that. Either way, I mean, this might be one of the most hyped movies in a long, long time. And while I cannot wait for it, I really hope that it doesn't get too overhyped. And then it doesn't live up to some fans' expectations. And they say, well, where was this? Where was that? I just hope we can enjoy Spider-Man No Way Home. And I'm very curious to see just how much of a game changer this is going to be, not just for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but for Sony's Spider-Man universe as well. I also want to talk about Kate, which is going to be coming out on Netflix on September the 10th. And it's that, she's been poisoned, and now she's got like 14 hours to seek revenge on those that have poisoned her. But then at the same time, she kind of befriends the daughter of one of the people that she's killed, because she's an assassin over the years. And there's a storyline there as well. But this movie looks insane, doesn't it? You want to talk about action. It reminds me, you remember that movie from Jason Statham, Crank, and how just crazy, just 100% on the gas that movie was all the time? You combine that with like a Fast and Furious vibe, and then you work in a little bit of The Professional there as well. You got to go back a ways for that one. And that's how I feel about this movie, Kate. I just think that this one has a little something special about it. And when it first was talked about during Geeked Week, this was the one that stood out to me. Like, this could be really, really cool and interesting. And I'm very interested to see how twisty it's going to be. See how many little twists and turns they're going to be in this thing. But if it's just a straight up action movie that I can kick back and enjoy, I'm not going to be mad about that either. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Kate has to offer on Netflix here in a couple weeks. I also want to talk about the trailer for the final season of Goliath, which is going to be coming to Amazon Prime Video on September the 24th. So Billy Bob Thornton is back, and so is his character of Billy. If you're a Goliath fan, you kind of know there was a little bit of a question mark regarding him. Well, he's alive. He's here. He's actually going back. He's going to partner back up with Patty, who's played by Nina Arianda, and they are, a prestigious law firm that's going to be taking on the opioid industry. But what I love about this trailer is that this is really Billy Bob Thornton versus J.K. Simmons, because J.K. Simmons is going to play the head of this opioid company, and it just looks like it's going to be an all-out freaking war inside and outside the courtroom. They had that little Days of Thunder-ish type scene in that where they're both driving race cars on a track, and which I really, really loved. And it just seems like it's going to be not just a battle of wits, but a how far are you willing to go type of situation. I think this is going to be a really, really neat finale that's going to be coming up. And I mean, we've already had the Bosch finale that hit from Amazon Studios, and now we're going to have Goliath ending this year as well. It's going to be a wild ride for a couple of the series that have been around for a while on Amazon Prime Video. I think this one's going to be really, really good. The latest Arrowverse crossover has been revealed by the CW, and it's actually going to be starting on The Flash Season 8 premiere, which is going to happen in November. And it's going to be a 5-part arc. It's going to be very emotional, according to Eric Wallace, who released a statement when this whole thing was coming out. Now, what's interesting is the names that they're bringing back. You got Black Lightning coming back. Cress Williams is going to have Shiloh Lee's going to be Sentinel. Tom Cavanaugh is going to reprise this role as Eobard Thawne, Reverse Flash. Good guy or bad guy? We don't know. Anti-hero? We don't know. Neil McDonough is going to be Damien Dark again. And again, Damien Dark seems to have turned the corner based on what we saw in Legends of Tomorrow. So again, friend or foe. Catherine McNamara being back as Mia Smoke, I think, is super interesting. Because now that things haven't worked out for a couple of series now that were planned for the CW and the Arrowverse, does that maybe breathe life back into these characters and Green Arrow and the Canaries a little bit? I don't know. It's just very interesting. And I'm not sure I want to open that door yet, but we'll keep that in mind. Brandon Routh's going to be back as the Atom. Ray Palmer, of course. And then Javicia Leslie's going to have Batwoman in this thing. Osiris Chow is going to be Ryan Choi once again. So where is that thing going to be headed? Of course, Team Flash going to be a part of this as well. Basically, it's going to be called Armageddon. There's going to be a major alien threat. Barry and Iris need an assist, so they call some friends over to help them. And that's the simplified version of it. But they said this is going to be some of the most emotional Flash episodes ever. And I'm thinking, really? After everything that's happened on that show, and now you're telling me these are going to be the most emotional some of the most emotional Flash episodes ever? That's a loaded thing to say, and it scares me to my core for these characters. So I talk about Catherine McNamara being back as Mia Smoke. For how long? They could kill her off in this crossover and end all that speculation with just one swift move. I do love that it's going to be a 5-part thing, though. I do love that we're still going to have that expanded 5-part experience. I think this will be good for Batwoman, for Javicia Leslie's character of Ryan Wilder to get in and kind of mix it up with the team a little bit, because Batwoman certainly struggled ratings-wise last season. I think part of it was that there were just so many fans that didn't want to give that show a chance after everything that went down with Ruby Rose and Kate Kane, and then they tried to replace her. I think there was just a lot of fans that didn't want to give Batwoman a chance and had a decent season. So maybe getting Javicia as Ryan Wilder out there in this crossover kind of gets fans to see, oh, hey, she's all right. Maybe gets more people to watch Batwoman. So I'm very interested to see how that works out. But this thing's just going to, pretty much all the Arrowverse crossovers have been great. I can't think of one that I really thought wasn't good. After Crisis on Infinite Earths, you wonder, okay, how are they going to be able to do one of these again? And now we're doing one again. So how it's going to work out and what kind of a story. And alien threat, that again is a very loaded thing. That could be almost anything, right? And what kind of threat brings this group together is another thing that interests me quite a great deal. So I cannot wait to see exactly how they're going to pull this thing together and how soon are we going to find out what this alien threat is, because you know it could be a lot of different things. It could be anything from Dominators to Lobo, right? You just don't know. So, hey, shock me, Arrowverse fans and Eric Wallace. Let's see what you got. Speaking of DC, this according to Cinelinx, which has since been confirmed by multiple outlets, by the way, a Black Canary movie is coming to HBO Max, and yes, it's going to be that Black Canary that you know from Birds of Prey and the Fabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn. Journey Smollett is going to be returning in that title role. Misha Green going to write the script. This, of course, adds to the movie slate, which is growing now on HBO Max. You've got Batgirl. You've got Blue Beetle, both of whom have also been cast. Check out past podcasts for that. This one, though, if there was a character in that group that deserved a little bit more storyline, it was Black Canary. Now, there's rumors already floating about a possible Huntress spinoff as well. I would pump the brakes on that. This character was the most interesting of the bunch as far as story that still needed to be told either post Birds of Prey or pre-Birds of Prey, and they haven't quite announced exactly which way they're going to go with that yet. But, with Lovecraft Country not continuing on HBO, that sort of opens the door for Journey to step back into this role and focus on something that, quite frankly, I would think would be a ton of fun for her. I think that she would have, I'm sure she jumped at the chance to do this again, because why wouldn't you? Right? I see no reason to not want to do this, because that is a character that you could make multiple movies of. Quite frankly, Black Canary's always been a very interesting character, not just with Green Arrow, but on her own as well. It's nice to finally see more and more people realizing that, and now she's going to get her own spotlight, which I think is really, really neat. No release dates or anything like that, but of course I'll keep you posted when we know what's going on. Finally, I wanted to talk about the first look photos from the Cowboy Bebop live action series, which is going to be coming to Netflix. Now we know the date. It's going to be November the 19th, so right before you cut the turkey, that's when you're going to be seeing that thing. You look at the photos, though. With John Cho, they nailed it. They nailed it with Spike. I'm sorry. I know it's just a first look photo. I don't care. They nailed it. And then you've got Jet, you've got Faye, Valentine. They look the part for sure. How much can you tell from a photo? Not a ton. But the aesthetics all look really good around them, too. And, they've got the synopsis up there. They're bounty hunters. They're cowboys trying to outrun their past sort of thing. And they're all deadly for their own reasons, right? But then there ends up being more to it than that. And therein lies your story. Now, if you're familiar with the anime, you kind of already know that. Not going to spoil it for anybody that isn't. But, if you want to talk about just aesthetics and looking the part, come on. John Cho's hair is out of control, and that's a great thing. I'm sorry. They got the Spike look so right for this series. And to me, you get the composer back that you need, the original composer from the anime working on the live action series. Aesthetically, the characters look right, look the way that fans want them to. This really gives you more and more check marks of thinking maybe they can pull this off. Because I know there was a hesitation there, and I understand that. But you got to have faith, because let's face it, Netflix has a pretty good track record with stuff like this. Not perfect. I'm not saying they're perfect. But I think they have a pretty good track record for adaptation. So that's why my radar is up on this being a very good potential to be something that we're going to be seeing for a long time. So Cowboy Bebop starting on Netflix on November the 19th. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Down and Nerdy Podcast. Again, I want to thank Sloane Morgan Siegel for stopping by to just, talk about comics and all kinds of other stuff. And, of course, coming up in Gotham Knights as Tim Drake. We're still waiting for a firm release date on that. But, as it gets closer, we'll keep you posted on that. That's why you got to keep your eyes on downandnerdypodcast.com, and also follow us on social media at downandnerdy757 on Twitter and on Instagram, and at downandnerdy on Facebook. Remember, you never have to apologize for being a nerd, so let your fan flag fly and be good to your fellow nerds.